SketchyGOichie.
Hey guys, welcome to another SketchyGOichie edition of the Quad Squad game, or at least that's what I'm calling it. This one's already in progress. So for those who are playing and following along, you can see in previous videos where I kind of created this kind of sketch exercise to get people to get everyone to kind of loosen up and just take a basic shape and draw on top of it anything you like. The whole point is to have fun sketching, but have a binding shape, or should I say a starter shape, to kind of work from, and then let your imagination take over from there. So as you can see, I am working in Procreate as usual, and I am also sort of I placed a colored background. This one's zoomed way in, so it's sort of drag anything that I'm rendering. But you can kind of see the hint of a little cross shape down the middle, sort of light straight lines that kind of crisscross down the middle. I've divided this page into 4 quadrants, hence the quad part of it, and I'm going to create 4 drawings of characters in each of the 4 quadrants, hence the squad part of it, and hopefully in the end it'll be 4 fun, interesting drawings. The whole point of these guys is to kind of render them quickly. As I've mentioned in the past, they do not have to be renders that are meant to hang in a gallery. They're just meant to kind of loosen up and allow the creative juices to flow. And the only thing that you really need to know is as long as you work within those quadrants, or in this case outside the quadrants and through the quadrants, the only thing to really be conscious of is the starting shape, and from there you just let it rip. It can extend outward, inward, however you feel, whatever comes to mind. Subject matter is completely up to you. You can determine which sort of subject matter you want to do before you start rendering in each of the 4 quadrants. And I like to time myself, and in this particular one I gave myself 5 full minutes for each quadrant. So as we zoom out, you will see there are 4 shapes within each box. I believe it was a circle, a triangle, a rectangle, almost squarish one, and a trapezoid. You can kind of see a little hint of that here. And then I sort of lightened it just so that I can render a darker black line on top. And for some reason, again, don't ask me to know what's going on inside my brain for these things, but I decided to do 4 sort of fantasy characters and started with a dragon. Maybe I've been watching a lot of Game of Thrones. So as you can see here, it started off with a little circle, and then I just kind of used the circle to sort of just start the creative energy, and expanded well beyond that circle. Working in Procreate obviously allows me to have layers, multi-layers. So in that case right there, what I did is created a new layer so that I could add white. And then I took that layer and put it underneath the black line art layer. So that way, whenever I render the line, it doesn't interrupt the black. So the white line will not interrupt the black line because it's actually underneath that layer. It's a great trick to use if you're using Procreate or any other drawing app. Could be Photoshop, could be anything, but you just layer it and just put it right underneath the line art, because the line art in Procreate is sort of already multiplied. It's a little deep dive into Photoshop, but it basically means the black line is not married to the purple underneath, and it allows you to, it's sort of transparent, so that allows you to kind of render. If you create a new layer, you can render underneath it without affecting either the background or the black line. There are other ways to do it, but it's the way I like to do it. I think it's the simplest way. So this is all within the 5-minute time limit I've given myself for that quadrant. That started off as a circle. As you can see here, I'm sort of highlighting the area, how I see the light hitting it based off of the flames coming out of the dragon's mouth. I kind of indicated his little back wing there, just under his jaw. I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, because once you start to putting a lot of emphasis, particularly with the white highlights, it starts bringing it closer to the light. For some reason, it's almost magical. The more intensity you give the highlight, the closer it goes to the light source. Just a trick of the eye, something I'm sure artists discovered centuries ago. Anyways, so I'm probably running low on time on my 5-minute limit for this particular box, and so I'm just kind of quickly putting last little touches and highlights and little scratchy lines here and there, just to kind of give it energy. And at some point I'll be like, all right, time's up, that one's done, let me get ready to move on to the next quadrant, which is that triangle. Back to the black line layer, and just start letting it go. At this point, I have no rhyme or reason what I'm going to draw. I'm literally just kind of throwing down some random shapes, and then at some point something emerges. So as you can see, I'm kind of using the triangle to just kind of give that shape a holding place. So that's what's kind of the starting point on this. And nothing extraordinary is going on here. It's literally just me going in, finding a shape or series of shapes, and then the character starts to emerge. I think at some point I throw that weird battle axe in, and I start to think, well, maybe this is some kind of ogre of some sort, keeping in with that fantasy tradition. So I was like, well, let me give this a little ogre vibe to it. Some jaggedy, ogre teeth, and weird jaw, and I think I even throw a little funky goatee on there, and some horns, and some little sort of like demonish looking ears. And as you can see, the character's just emerging from me, just kind of freestyling some shapes and allowing the character to kind of emerge from that. And that's really the whole point of this kind of quad squad game. It's just, there's your original shape. That's the starting point. That's kind of like, gentlemen, start your engines. And from there, you just kind of go. And I decided to kind of have this weird ogre character with this weird little battle axe swooping. He's not really swooping at the dragon. I think you got to recognize my intent. I think at this point, if you want to call it an intention, was just to kind of have 4 separate characters in the fantasy realm within each box. So to interactions, maybe I'll do ones down the road where I'll actually kind of force in some interactions. But I don't want you guys to feel like you have to do that. I want you to really let it be free. These 4 characters in these 4 quadrants do not necessarily have to connect. They certainly don't have to overlap like I did in this particular case. I was just kind of experimenting with this. More often than not, I'll render the characters right over their basic shape, be it a triangle, as it is in this case, and then move on to the next quadrant. For some reason, I like the flame sort of kind of crossing over its border and into his, and it appears like he's swooping at the other guy to keep him out of the box. But if an art piece tells a story, all the better. So I can tell you I'm probably at this point, because I know people like to ask me, well, how long does it take you to draw these things? At this point, if I'm moving over to the white line, or should I say the white highlight, probably maybe at the 2 or 3 minute point, maybe a bit further along than that. This white highlighting part probably takes me about a minute to tack on, particularly because I'm rendering it. To be clear, because I'm rendering these things loosely, and not particularly that intensely. Or my intention is literally to kind of just capture the character, in this case, tell a little bit of a story, and move on to the next box or next quadrant. So timing wise, actually is probably about half or a little greater than half on the line art, and then probably much greater than half, actually in this case probably 2/3, and then leaving myself a little bit of time for the white highlight. And that's because I'm in Procreate and I have the ability to kind of throw a layer on and render in white. But if I had a piece of colored paper, just colored construction paper, and I like to use a China marker, if I met your local art store, and then maybe a white China marker if you can find one, or a white sort of pastel pencil or a colored pencil. If I have those 2 or 3 elements, the paper, the dark black pencil, and the white pencil on a colored sheet of paper, I'm all good. You guys would be all good too, to just kind of play the game along with me. So maybe actually I should figure out a point at some time in the future to be able to actually do a live, maybe stream Quad Squad game, and we can all play along. I'll select a subject matter. We'll all draw the 4 basic shapes within the quadrants, and we'll throw a little timer on it, 5 minutes for each. And once that time is up, we'll move on to the next box, which I'm sure I'm just about ready to do right now. Yep, that's me switching out. So the 5 minutes was up for Mr. Ogre with the Battle Axe box. So moving into the 3rd quadrant, and that sort of rectangle-y square, probably a little closer to square than rectangle. And again, at this point, I have no clue what I'm gonna draw. I think my decision was, I want to have that drawing, whatever it may be. At this point, it's kind of a ghost. I think I turned it into a wizard of some kind, some sort of like dwarf wizard. I was really in a D&D mode for some reason on this one. And I decided to sort of have it projecting up. Whatever he's going to be projecting, energy or whatever it is, magical energy, it's going to be heading back up towards the dragon. I don't know why I chose to have more interaction with these than is necessary, but I want to be 100% clear. You do not have to make these interact. They could be 4 completely random things. They don't even necessarily have to follow a theme, even though I like to, if I start down a path, if I'm going to draw robots or in this case fantasy figures, or if I'm going to draw little cutesy characters or superheroes or whatever theme I choose, I kind of want to carry it through all 4 quadrants. I think it's a bit more of a challenge, but you don't necessarily need to do that. The whole point is just to have fun, just coming up with something out of your imagination. For these, none of them have reference, although I love to work from reference, particularly if I'm drawing a specific character. Oftentimes I will render, before work, I will render characters who are licensed characters, Marvel or DC or Star Wars or whatever. And so those have to be on model. Those have to be, based on what was established as what they were, so if I'm drawing, for example, I'm drawing Darth Vader, I would certainly want to get reference to Darth Vader so I can capture his, all the little details of his helmet and his costume. So anyways, back to this guy. This little sort of dwarf wizard, this little short guy with lots of power. Again, on a timing perspective, I am probably closer to the, say the 2.5, 3 minute mark, maybe even edging towards the, 3.5, 4 minute mark. And so I know I'm going to do a lot of work with the white highlight with this. So I've actually left out the energy blast that's going to come out of his hand until the very, very end. And I saved that for the last minute and a half of this drawing. So you can see me kind of putting the little finishing touches. I want you to notice a quick little technique thing. Those sort of little cross-hatchy lines, the ones that are sort of these directional lines that are heading off to the left. I want you to know how they're all heading off to the left. They're all heading towards my target. It's a nice little trick that all artists use, particularly artists who work in ink line, where the directional lines will bring you towards your target. Wherever you want to direct the eye to go, that's where you want the taper of the line to kind of end. Is where you want to target. You want your target. You want to target the viewer to head towards that. So that's what I'm doing. That's why all the directional lines are heading off to the left. Well, now that he's upside down, heading downward. And so you can see here, I'm at the highlighting stage. Again, last minute or so. of the drawing. I'm adding sort of little lightning blast coming from his hand. And I'm doing it in white because I can. You can do that as well, again, on paper. So don't feel as though you have to have Procreate to do any sketching. Please, it's Procreate's I don't know what 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and those who use it, I'm sure love it. And the fact that I use it literally to do all my paying gigs is, for me, a big testament to the app and how a guy like me who's always been a traditional artist, pretty much my entire life, just kind of essentially was morphed into a digital artist, and I love every second of it. I love the freedom, and I want you guys to as well. So, if anybody knows anybody from Procreate, have them give me a call. I'll gladly endorse them. So, anyways, so finishing touches are starting to happen on this guy. Again, you see the intensity of the light is greater, closest to the light source. So that's why certain areas are much more intensely rendered, and some are just a little touch of a white line, particularly along the edges away from the light source. I think that's probably just kind of a reflected light. And at this point here, I decide, I'm going to do sort of this little magical effect around his staff, his little jewel, magical jewel on the crest of that staff. And I think this was kind of inspired partly. I don't know why it looks like kind of a constellation thing, but I guess it's kind of inspired by the Marvel movies, the way they render magic, particularly in like Doctor Strange. It's sort of these cool sort of graphics that kind of get superimposed in the image. So I think that's what that was supposed to represent. I think I ran out of time, so I was like, all right, 5 minutes up. All right, you see me switching layers. That means I'm going to the final quadrant. And in the final quadrant, I am working from this trapezoid shape, as you can see. This shape, for some reason, to me, didn't lend itself to interacting with the rest of the page. Don't know why, but for some reason, I decided to take that trapezoid and make it its own thing. What its own thing is at this point, I have no clue. I think what this thing turned out to be some sort of weird, I don't know, elf gnome thing, I guess, holding a weird sword, a little teeny tiny sword, probably teeny tiny because I didn't want it to blend into the dragon's tail, weird sort of spatial thing that I have. I don't like to things to interact awkwardly on the page. Anyone who knows me, whenever I'm doing like sketchbook pages, I like to sort of have them sort of if it's a collection of even the most randomest images, I like to have them sort of fit the page almost together, even if they're all completely different items. I don't know why I do it. I don't have to. I've stressed it several times in this particular video. It's not necessary for these images to interact, but I oftentimes like to interact. And I think the only thing that bugs me about this page is the fact that this guy doesn't necessarily interact. You can kind of see it now at this point. I accidentally hit the eraser tool, so that's why I actually started erasing things. Generally, I don't erase at all when I do these, or very minimally. But I am working at Procreate, so I have the ability to erase. And I think if I can do it quickly, I'm not breaking my own rules of of keeping these things loose and gestural, and not really caring about how they turn out in the end. That is ultimately my goal. So you'll forgive me for hitting the eraser tool and using it for a split second there, and then I came to my senses and put it away, and then I got back to do what I was supposed to do, was just sketching. So there you go. I'm almost at the last of my erasing that's happening here with this sword. The ironic thing about me erasing it is I had it right the first time. I wanted this little, it's almost like a long dagger, I guess is a better way to describe it. Kind of like a Link from Legend of Zelda, I think. Actually, that's probably what he kind of resembles. Now that I look at him, kind of a Link-like character with sort of nymph, not gnome, nymph figures. Nymph, PH, I believe is. No, there's an F in there. Nymph, I'm not sure. Again, no fact checking and definitely no spell checking for me on these videos. So, obviously, if I'm at the white stage, I'm definitely running out of time. I actually think I'm getting into the white stage a little earlier. I think because this character has much less render than some of the other ones. I don't have a timer, or at least I don't have the editing ability to put a timer yet on these. I'll learn that, and if someone knows how to add a timer in iMovie as an overlay or another video, please let me know. So anyways, I'm at the finishing touch stage of this whole piece. I'm zooming out so you can kind of see all four. I think 3 of the 4 kind of interact, and then the little Link-like character is kind of on his own, in his own world. But overall, I'm kind of pretty happy with the page. You know, I'm sort of spending some of the Link quadrants, some of his time putting some highlights on the dragon. But here we go. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can see the dragon character. Quadrant 1 originally started as a circle, then over to our buddy, the ogre demon character with the giant battle axe. He's quadrant 2. The key was a triangle shape. This is our wizard dwarf character. He started as a triangle, I believe. And lastly, our trapezoid guy, sort of elf warrior guy. And that is the full crew, the full squad, quad squad. Hope you guys enjoy these. I really do. Check me out online, rand247.com. SketchyGOichie. Live your moment. Happy sketching, y'all. Peace.